I never imagined that going back to the dance studio, the place where so much had happened, would unlock something inside me I didn't even know was still there. I thought I'd left that part of my life behind, the pain, the heartbreak, the images of Patrick's hands in mine as we spun together to music that once made us feel invincible. But there I was again, standing in the mirrored studio of our old dance group, my heart thudding loud enough to drown out the beat. I had told myself I came back for the music, for the sweat and the burn, but maybe I was also trying to reclaim something I'd lost. Patrick and I had been together for nearly 2 years. We met through that very dance class, falling into rhythm with each other both literally and emotionally. At first, it had been magnetic, easy, passionate, full of late-night conversations and dances that bled into sunrise. But time and pressure did what they often do. We misunderstood each other. We built walls instead of bridges. And eventually we broke apart. The breakup left me breathless in the worst way, and for months I avoided anything that reminded me of him, including the one place that had once felt like home. Until tonight. The studio was mostly empty when I arrived, just a handful of familiar faces stretching and warming up. I tried not to make eye contact, not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't want to see sympathy or worse, questions. I slipped into the back row, tied my shoes, and focused on the music vibrating from the speakers. That's when he walked in. Tall, lean, with messy dark hair and a calm confidence in the way he moved, he paused just inside the doorway, scanning the room like he was checking for someone. Then his eyes landed on me. And something shifted. There was no obvious reaction, no wide-eyed gasp or drop jaw. But our eyes held just a fraction longer than polite. There was curiosity there. Electricity. Something that said, "You're not a stranger, I'll forget in 5 minutes." He introduced himself to the instructor, Roger, 25, new to the club, apparently transferred from another city and looking to get his rhythm back. I smirked at that without meaning to. He caught it. I looked away. Warm-ups began, and I did my best to stay focused, falling into old muscle memory as the music pulsed louder. But my body wasn't as obedient as I wanted it to be. Every time Roger moved, I noticed. He was fluid, precise, but also loose in a way that made you want to follow his lead. When we rotated partners midway through the session, it was inevitable that we'd be paired. "Hey," he said, giving me a quick once-over. "You've done this before." "A little," I replied, deadpan. He grinned. "Let's see if I can keep up." We started slow, working through the steps, but soon his hand found the small of my back, guiding me. His grip was firm, controlled, not invasive, but confident. It sent a tingle up my spine. When we moved into turns and tempo changes, our closeness intensified. His breath grazed my neck once. I caught a glimpse of his smile in the mirror as he dipped me slightly, and I felt something stir deep in my chest, something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in months. At the end of class, drenched in sweat and still catching my breath, I felt his hand on my arm. "You dance like someone trying to forget something," he said. I blinked. "Is that a compliment or a therapy referral?" He smiled, that damn smile. "Both." I laughed genuinely for the first time in what felt like weeks. We exchanged names properly then. No awkwardness. Just two guys still buzzing from movement, maybe also from each other. "I usually shower here before heading home," he said casually, adjusting the strap of his bag. "You?" "Sometimes," I said. He looked me in the eye, and for a second, it felt like the whole locker room plan had already been decided for us. "See you in there," he said, and disappeared into the hallway. I stood still for a moment. My heart was thudding again, not from the dancing this time, but from something else. A feeling I hadn't let myself experience in a long time. The thought of Patrick was still in the back of my mind, but something about Roger had just woken up a part of me I thought was gone. The locker room was humid with steam and faint echoes of music still drifting in from the studio. I had taken my time getting there, giving Roger space, giving myself space, trying to breathe through the adrenaline still pulsing through my body, trying to pretend that tonight was just like any other dance night. But it wasn't. And I knew it. The moment I stepped inside, I saw him again, already shirtless, towel slung over his shoulder, standing by the row of lockers closest to the showers. His skin was flushed from the workout, his hair damp with sweat, and his eyes lifted the second I entered. No words. Just a look. The kind that sends your heart thudding before you even take another step. "You made it," he said softly. I gave a quiet laugh and walked over, pretending like I wasn't thinking about what might happen next. Even though every part of me was. "Wasn't sure I would," I said, unzipping my gym bag. "But here we are." There was something thick in the air between us. Not tension exactly, more like awareness. It was in the way he moved a little closer as I pulled off my shirt, in the way our hands almost touched as I reached for a towel. Everything suddenly felt louder. The hum of the overhead lights, the faint clang of a locker door closing in the distance, the rush of the showers behind the corner wall. "I meant what I said," he murmured. "About my dancing needing therapy?" He grinned. "No, about you dancing like someone trying to forget something. Hey, thanks for watching until this point. Please leave a comment if you're enjoying the video. It really helps us grow the channel and reach more people. And hey, thank you very much. Let's get back to story." I swallowed, the joke dying in my throat. He stepped closer. Just one step. Just enough. "I don't know what your story is," he said, voice low. "But I felt something tonight." I looked up at him, at those dark eyes, and I didn't have the words to deny it, because I felt it too. And then, slowly, he reached for my face. His hand cupped my jaw, thumb brushing just below my cheekbone. I didn't move away. Couldn't. I leaned into it. Then his lips met mine. It started soft, curious, like he was asking a question without speaking. And my answer was in how I kissed him back, with a hunger that had been building for months, maybe years, since long before I even knew his name. He pulled me closer, both our towels forgotten on the bench. My hands found his sides, slid up his back, felt the warmth of his skin and the tension in his muscles. It was fast and slow all at once, breathless, intense, the kind of kiss that sends heat all the way down to your knees. We didn't speak. There was no need. He guided me toward the back of the locker room, where the lights were dimmer, where the noise of running water masked everything. We kissed again, harder this time. My back hit the wall. His hand slid beneath the waistband of my gym shorts. I gasped into his mouth. And then, a door opened. I froze. Roger pulled back, just a little, his chest rising and falling as we both turned toward the sound of footsteps. And then I heard it, a voice I knew like my own heartbeat. "Glenn." I stepped out from behind the lockers, heart crashing against my ribs. It was Patrick, hair damp from a workout, towel slung low on his hips, eyes wide the second he saw us. And the silence that followed was like ice water down my spine. His gaze flicked between Roger and me, then settled on Roger, lingering there for a moment too long. "I didn't know you were still coming to the Thursday class," he said, voice controlled but not cold. "I wasn't," I answered, breathless. "Not until tonight." He looked between us again. Something changed in his eyes. Not anger, not hurt, curiosity. "I see," he said. Roger, to his credit, didn't step away. He just glanced between us and then back at me. "I should go," I said suddenly, the moment starting to crack, but Patrick stepped forward. "You don't have to." I blinked. "What?" He looked at me, then at Roger. "I'm not stupid, Glenn. I felt this thing between us fading long before we broke up. But watching you just now," he paused, took a breath. "I've never seen you like that. You looked alive." Neither of us spoke. And then, to my complete shock, Patrick stepped closer, to both of us. "I don't know what's happening right now," he said, voice lower now. "But if you're not ready for it to end." He reached out and touched my chest. My breath caught. Roger looked at me. I looked at Patrick. And somehow, without anyone saying another word, I knew. This night wasn't over. Not yet. I always thought heartbreak came with sharp edges. Like you'd bleed out slowly, piece by piece, every time you ran into someone who reminded you of what you'd lost. But standing between Roger and Patrick, half naked in the echo of a locker room that had seen too many versions of me already, I realized something. Sometimes, heartbreak softens you. Sometimes, it makes you open in ways you didn't expect, or even think you wanted. Patrick's fingers rested lightly on my chest, and the air between the three of us pulsed with something thick and unspoken. I looked at him. He looked at Roger, then at me again. Roger didn't move, didn't interrupt, didn't pull away. Instead, he stepped in closer, brushing the back of his fingers along my arm like a silent invitation. And I didn't resist. I don't know what this is, I whispered. You don't have to know, Patrick replied, his voice low, steady. You just have to feel it. There was a moment, just one, where I could have stopped it, where I could have pulled back and said, this is too much. But instead, I let go. The three of us gravitated toward the far wall, behind the last row of lockers, just out of view from the hallway. It wasn't completely private, and maybe that's what made it feel even more unreal, like we were doing something bold, something reckless, something undeniably alive. Patrick leaned in first. He kissed me gently, carefully, like he was remembering my shape. His lips were familiar, but the way he touched me was different. There was no ownership this time. Just intention. Just want. When he pulled back, Roger was there, watching us, waiting. And when our mouths met again, me and him, the contrast sent a shiver through me. Roger kissed with fire. Patrick kissed with history. And somehow both made perfect sense. Hands moved slowly at first. Over chests, across backs, under waistbands. Every touch was a question. Every breath was a silent answer. We weren't rushing. We were feeling, each of us trying to make sense of this impossible moment by leaning into it. The sounds in the locker room faded away. I didn't care anymore if someone heard us. If someone walked in. I wasn't in my body so much as with it, with theirs, lost in a rhythm that felt both entirely new and oddly safe. I don't remember who touched who first after that. I just remember warmth. Mouths finding skin. Hands gripping, pulling, holding. I remember the tremble in Patrick's breath when Roger touched his waist. I remember the look in Roger's eyes when Patrick kissed my neck while Roger held my face in his palms. We were three men stitched together by curiosity, tension, and the unexpected unraveling of boundaries. And when it finally slowed, when the heat gave way to quiet breathing and flushed skin, none of us spoke right away. We just sat there on the tile floor, backs against the cool metal lockers, sweat cooling on our skin, our legs still tangled together. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't even confusing. It was just real. And when Patrick broke the silence, his voice was soft, the kind of soft I hadn't heard from him in months. I don't want this to be the last time. Roger didn't blink. Then it won't be. And me? I just nodded. Because I didn't know what this was yet. But I knew I wasn't ready to walk away. Not from either of them. We left the gym together. No one said it out loud, there was no plan, no whispered agreement, but somehow we all knew we weren't going our separate ways just yet. Patrick offered to drive. Roger and I exchanged a glance, shrugged almost in sync, and followed him out into the cool night air. The air was damp and the streetlights reflected off the pavement in that blurry way that made everything feel cinematic. I slid into the front seat. Roger took the back. The silence wasn't tense, it was loaded but not heavy. More like we were each trying to catch up with what had just happened. Patrick's hands were relaxed on the steering wheel. His window was cracked just enough to let the wind slip in, tousling the ends of his hair. Didn't think I'd see you again like that, he said eventually, eyes forward. I didn't either, I admitted, staring at the passing lights. I wasn't even planning on going tonight. Roger leaned forward between the seats, voice softer than usual. But you did. We all did. Feels like that has to mean something. We fell quiet again, not because we ran out of things to say, but because nothing needed to be said just yet. Patrick's apartment hadn't changed. Same scuffed hardwood, same framed vinyl covers on the hallway wall. But walking into it now felt different. I had been there 100 times when we were together. I knew every creak in the floor, every drawer that stuck. But now Roger was with us. And everything felt rearranged, not physically, but emotionally. We kicked off our shoes by the door. The air inside was warm, laced with the faint scent of cedar and something familiar, Patrick's cologne maybe, or the fabric softener I'd once used when I still did our laundry. Roger dropped his bag on a chair, I scanning the place with quiet curiosity. You two lived here together? Patrick nodded. For a while, I added. Roger looked at us, his gaze unreadable but not judgmental. You still feel it? It was a bold question. But Patrick didn't flinch. Yeah, he said. But not like before. It's changed. And maybe that's okay. We drifted into the living room, sitting close without needing to. I felt the pull between all three of us again, that strange gravity we hadn't escaped since the dance floor. Patrick sat on one end of the couch, I took the other, and Roger, casually, like he'd been doing it for years, sat between us. Close enough to touch either one of us if he reached. And he did. Not aggressively. Not like someone claiming space. Just gently. His hand rested on my thigh for a moment, then moved to Patrick's, his fingers brushing just above the knee. I saw Patrick's jaw twitch, not from resistance, but from the overwhelming sensation of being wanted again. There was no rush. We leaned into it slowly, like we were rediscovering each other. Even Roger, who hadn't been there before, seemed to know exactly how to match our energy. Patrick kissed me first. It wasn't needy or nostalgic. It was deliberate. A reminder that yes, we had history, but also that something new had started. His lips were softer than I remembered, slower. My hand curled into the back of his neck, grounding us both. Then I felt Roger's hand slide behind me, his lips pressing gently to the base of my neck. I turned into him. We kissed. And this time, Patrick didn't look away. He leaned in too, until I was between them again, caught in a slow-burning current that seemed to melt away any old fear I had of being too much or not enough. Their hands explored with intention, one on my waist, another across my back, another lifting my chin gently. Each movement built on the last, like we were crafting something none of us wanted to define, but all of us needed to feel. We didn't rush. We touched, we kissed, we whispered things that didn't matter but still somehow meant everything. And when it was over, when the heat gave way to stillness and we were tangled up in the afterglow of something that felt impossibly real, none of us moved. Patrick's head rested on my shoulder. Roger's arm lay draped over my waist. "I don't know what this is," I said, voice barely above a whisper. "But it feels good," Roger said. Patrick nodded slowly. "It feels honest." And maybe that was enough. Sunlight came in slow. It slipped through Patrick's thin curtains and stretched across the floor in quiet gold, touching the edge of the blanket where our bodies lay tangled. I blinked awake to find Roger still asleep, one arm thrown across my chest, his breath steady and warm. Patrick was curled against my back, close enough that I could feel his heartbeat if I focused. I didn't move. Not because I was afraid to, but because I didn't want to lose the feeling. There had been no awkward rush to leave, no sudden realization that we'd made some mistake. In fact, the only surprise was how right it felt, how natural it had been, the way we all folded into each other like this wasn't something brand new but something waiting to happen all along. Patrick stirred first. I felt the slow drag of his fingers across my shoulder, his voice thick with sleep. "You still here?" I smiled against the pillow. "Looks like it." "Good." Roger let out a sleepy groan and stretched, arm brushing my chest as he blinked up at the ceiling. He murmured. "You two always sleep this warm?" I laughed quietly. "Only when there's a third body radiating heat in the middle of the bed." Roger smirked and rolled over onto his stomach. "Worth it." Eventually, we moved. We pulled ourselves up and out of the haze, one by one, each of us searching for our shirts in the soft light of morning. But the atmosphere didn't shift. There was no rush to create space or pretend like the night hadn't happened. We made coffee, sat around the small kitchen table, passed a single mug between us when we realized someone had forgotten to run the dishwasher. "This is weird," I said finally, smiling into my sip. "But it doesn't feel weird." Roger nodded. "It's like we didn't break any rules because none of us really made any to begin with." Patrick leaned back in his chair, arms folded behind his head. "Honestly, I haven't felt this comfortable in months." We all paused. There was still something fragile about it. Something that could easily break if we tried to name it too fast or asked too much of it before we were ready. "I don't know what this is yet," I admitted. "But I want to find out." Roger looked at me, then at Patrick. "Same." Patrick's smile was small, but real. "Me too." It wasn't a love triangle. It didn't feel like we were competing or choosing or replacing anything. It felt more like we were discovering something bigger, something about connection and forgiveness and the unexpected chemistry between three people who, at one point or another, had each been missing a piece of something essential. Later, as Roger left, kissing me once, then Patrick, he paused at the door. "Next Thursday?" he asked. "You're coming back to class?" I said. He winked. "Wouldn't miss it." After he left, I stood with Patrick in the doorway, both of us quiet for a moment. "Are we okay?" I asked finally. He turned to me, brushing a thumb gently along my jaw. "We're better than okay. We're open." And that word open stayed with me all day, because I wasn't sure what would happen next. But for the first time in a long time, I wanted to find out. The next week unfolded like nothing had changed, and yet everything had. I went to work. Patrick did his usual schedule. Roger texted a couple times, nothing heavy, a dumb meme, a comment about music he heard that reminded him of our class. Life kept moving, unbothered by what the three of us had stumbled into. And somehow that felt reassuring. We didn't collapse under it. We grew into it. Thursday came again. I stood outside the dance studio for a moment before walking in, wondering if it would feel different, if the mirrors would show me someone else now, someone who had crossed a line he wasn't ready for. But they didn't. If anything, I looked steadier. Roger arrived right on time. That same casual smile, the same quiet confidence. He gave me a soft nod across the room and I smiled back. We didn't have to pretend anything. The energy between us was still there, charged, familiar, new. And just before warm-up started, the door opened again. Patrick. He hadn't come to this group since we broke up. I hadn't expected him tonight, not after last week, not after everything. But there he was, stepping in like it was no big deal, like he hadn't once walked out of this room with my hand in his. He made eye contact with me, then with Roger, and he smiled. It wasn't awkward. It wasn't tense. It was warm. He joined the back row and we all moved through the motions like we were just three guys who happened to share a rhythm. Which in a way we were. But there was something underneath it now, unknowing. When class ended, we lingered. Roger stretched near the mirrors. Patrick stood by the door, pretending to scroll through his phone. I pulled my bag over my shoulder, then caught both their eyes. "We grabbing food?" I asked. Patrick raised a brow. "Is that a suggestion or a challenge?" Roger grinned. "If you're paying, it's a suggestion." We all laughed. On the walk to the diner, the conversation was light: dance instructors, playlists, someone's ridiculous outfit. But under the humor, something had settled. It wasn't about labels or expectations. It was just ours. Something between friendship and exploration, between comfort and desire. Back at Patrick's that night, we didn't rush anything. We curled up on the couch, this time with more pillows than people. We didn't undress each other right away. We didn't even kiss for a while. We just existed. Close. Easy. Connected. Eventually, someone leaned in. I don't remember who. Maybe it was me. The kisses came slow. So did the touches. No performance. No need to prove anything. It felt like warmth shared between people who'd finally stopped searching for what they thought they wanted and stumbled into what they needed. The lights stayed dim. The night stayed quiet. And as we drifted, bodies wrapped around one another, I realized something that made my chest tighten, not in fear, but in recognition. This wasn't about replacing anything. This was about expanding. Patrick had loved me once. He still did, just differently now. And Roger wasn't a rebound. He was a spark I hadn't expected, but one I was deeply grateful for. We hadn't built something conventional, but it was real. And when I closed my eyes, with Patrick's hand resting on my shoulder and Roger's fingers curled around my wrist, I thought, this isn't the end of something. This is the beginning of everything.